The distress beacon cut through the silence like a scream. Captain Reeves pressed his palm against the cold metal of the airlock, staring into the swirling dust storm outside. 3 days into their salvage run through the Corvin Belt, and they'd picked up a signal, faint, irregular, dying. His crew waited behind him, their breathing loud in their helmets. "It's coming from the wreckage," said Chin, her voice crackling over the calm. "Old Corvin cruiser. Looks like it's been there for weeks." Reeves knew the rules. Corvin space was neutral territory, technically, but their species didn't take kindly to humans poking around their debris fields. The war had ended 5 years ago with a fragile ceasefire. One wrong move, one perceived insult, and the shooting would start again. But distress beacons meant survivors. And survivors meant someone was dying out there in the dark. "We go," Reeves said. "Fast and quiet." They crossed the gap between ships in under 2 minutes, Boots' magnetic lock to the hull of the Corvin vessel. The cruiser was massive, easily 10 times the size of their salvage runner, but it had been torn open like paper. Reeves could see the burn marks from plasma cannons, the twisted metal where something had ripped through the armor plating. No ship should have been able to do that to a Corvin warship. Inside, the air was thin and cold. Emergency lighting flickered in the corridors, casting everything in sickly red. Chin moved ahead with her scanner, tracking the beacon. "This way." Down 3 levels. They passed bodies, Corvin soldiers in their distinctive silver armor, frozen in death. Some clutched weapons. Others had tried to seal bulkheads before whatever killed them reached them. Reeves counted 12 corpses before he stopped counting. The beacon led them to a chamber deep in the ship's interior. The door had been sealed from the outside, welded shut with industrial torches. Someone had wanted whatever was inside to stay inside. Chin cut through the seal with her plasma cutter, and the door groaned open, releasing a puff of stale air. Inside was a single figure. She lay on the floor in a pool of dried blood, blue blood, the Corvin kind. Her armor was ornate, covered in intricate patterns that marked her as nobility. High nobility. But what stopped Reeves cold wasn't the armor. It was her face. Corvin faces were sharp and angular, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. But hers was different, smoother, more refined. And on her forehead, barely visible beneath the grime and blood, was a golden circlet. "Holy hell!" whispered Chin. "That's a royal marker." The figure stirred. One of her eyes opened, crystal blue and unfocused. She tried to speak, but only a wet gurgle came out. Her side had been torn open by something sharp, and the wound had festered. Infection had set in days ago. "She's alive," Reeves said, dropping to his knees beside her. "Chin, get the med kit." "Cap, we can't, now." Chin hesitated for only a second before pulling the emergency medical supplies from her pack. Reeves tore open the trauma bandages and pressed them against the wound. The Corvin Royal gasped, her body convulsing. Her hand shot out and grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. She spoke in Corvin. Reeves didn't understand the language, but he recognized the tone, desperate, urgent, pleading. "I don't know what you're saying," he said softly, keeping his hands steady on the wound. "But I'm not leaving you here." Her grip tightened. She spoke again, more insistent, and this time she pointed toward the far corner of the chamber. Reeves followed her gesture and saw what she was indicating, a small bundle wrapped in thermal cloth, hidden in the shadows. Chin moved toward it. "Cap!" The bundle moved. Chin pulled back the cloth and froze. "Oh my God!" Inside was a child. Corvin, maybe 3 or 4 years old by human standards, though Reeves knew their species matured differently. The child was unconscious, breathing shallow, but alive. Its skin was pale, too pale, and it wore miniature versions of the royal armor. "They locked them in here," Chin said, her voice hollow. "Someone locked them both in here to die." Reeves looked at the royal again. She was watching him with all 4 eyes now, and despite the pain she must have been in, despite the fever and the infection, her expression was clear. She was begging him to save the child. We're taking them both, Reeves said. Captain, if we take a Corvin Royal, we're taking them both. He lifted the child carefully, cradling its small body against his chest. Chen helped the Royal to her feet, supporting her weight as they made their way back through the corridors. Every step seemed to cost the Royal woman something. Her breathing was ragged, and blue blood dripped from her wounds, leaving a trail behind them. They were halfway to the airlock when the Royal collapsed. Reeves caught her before she hit the ground, lowering her gently. Her eyes were unfocused again, rolling back. Her lips moved, forming words he couldn't understand. Stay with me, he said. We're almost there. But her hand went to the child, touching its face one last time. Then, she looked at Reeves, and he saw something in her expression that transcended species and language, a mother's desperate hope. The child stirred in his arms and opened its eyes. 4 crystal blue eyes, just like hers. It looked at Reeves with confusion and fear, then at the Royal woman. It made a small sound, somewhere between a whimper and a word. The Royal woman smiled, just slightly, and closed her eyes. The medical bay of their ship wasn't designed for Corvin physiology. Reeves had Chen pull up everything they had on Corvin biology while he worked on the Royal's wounds. The child sat in the corner, silent and watching, its eyes never leaving the woman on the table. Her core temperature's dropping, Chen said, monitoring the readouts. I don't know if that's normal or it's not, Reeves said. Corvin's run hot. She's going into shock. He'd cleaned the wound as best he could, but infection had spread through her system. Her breathing was shallow, her pulse erratic. They didn't have the right antibiotics. They didn't have the right blood. They didn't have anything that could save her. The child made that sound again, the whimper word. It slid off its seat and approached the table, reaching up with one small hand to touch the Royal's arm. She opened her eyes. All 4 of them focused on the child, and she spoke, a single word, clear despite her condition. The child responded, its voice small and frightened. They're talking, Chen whispered. What are they saying? Reeves didn't know, but he could guess. He'd seen this scene before, in human hospitals, in field tents during the war. He'd seen parents saying goodbye to their children when there was no other choice. The Royal turned her head toward Reeves. She spoke in broken, heavily accented English. Protect. We will, Reeves said immediately. I promise. She nodded slightly, then turned back to the child. She spoke more words in Corvin, her voice getting weaker with each syllable. The child was crying now, silent tears that ran down its pale face. It clutched her hand with both of its own. Cap, we need to do something, Chen said. We need to. There's nothing we can do. Reeves kept his voice steady, but, inside, anger and frustration burned. They'd come so far. They'd gotten her off that ship. It shouldn't end like this. The Royal's breathing hitched. Her eyes closed again, but this time they didn't reopen. Her chest rose once, twice, then went still. The child's cry became audible, a keening wail that seemed too large for its small body. It shook the Royal's arm, trying to wake her, speaking frantically in Corvin. Reeves moved around the table and knelt beside the child. It flinched away from him, pressing itself against the table, but he didn't try to grab it. He just stayed there, at its level, letting it see him. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'm so sorry. The child stared at him with those 4 crystal blue eyes, and Reeves saw the exact moment comprehension set in. The moment it understood that its mother was gone. It didn't run. It didn't fight. It just stood there, trembling, lost in a way that broke something in Reeves's chest. Slowly, carefully, he extended his hand. Not to grab, not to pull, just offering. The child looked at his hand for a long moment. Then, with hesitating steps, it moved forward and placed its small hand in his palm. Reeves closed his fingers gently around it. You're safe now. I promise. The child didn't understand the words, but it must have understood something in his tone, because it didn't pull away. It just stood there, holding on to this strange alien who had tried to save its mother, and quietly cried. Chin cleared her throat from behind him. Cap, we need to talk about what we do next. We keep the promise. The Corvin Empire will be looking for them. This is royalty. I know what this is. Reeves stood, still holding the child's hand. And I know what happens if we turn them over. Someone locked them in that chamber to die, Chin. Someone on their own ship. Someone who wanted them dead. So what, we just keep a Corvin royal child on our salvage runner? Until we figure out who we can trust. He looked down at the child, who was watching him with wary, exhausted eyes. Until we know they'll be safe. The child spoke, a short sentence in Corvin. What did it say? Chin asked. Reeves shook his head. I don't know. But we need to learn. The next 3 days were chaos contained in a small ship. The child wouldn't eat the food they offered, wouldn't sleep except in fits and starts, and flinched at every sudden movement. Reeves spent hours trying to communicate, using gestures and simple words, but the language barrier was a wall between them. On the 4th day, the child finally spoke a word Reeves understood. Water. He merely dropped the data pad he'd been studying. Yes. Water. You want water? The child nodded, and Reeves realized it must have been listening to them speak English, trying to learn. He brought water in a cup designed for Corvin physiology, wider, shallow. The child drank carefully, watching him the entire time. My name is Reeves, he said, pointing to himself. Reeves. The child considered this. Reeves. Close enough. He smiled, trying to look non-threatening. What's your name? The child spoke a Corvin word, something with too many syllables and a clicking sound humans couldn't reproduce. I can't say that, Reeves admitted. Can I call you something else? Something easier? The child tilted its head, confused. Reeves thought for a moment, then pointed to the child. Sky. Your eyes are like Earth's sky. Can I call you Sky? The child repeated the word. Sky. Yes. Sky. He pointed to himself again. Reeves. Then, to the child. Sky. The child, Sky, nodded slowly. It was a small thing, a simple exchange, but it felt like progress. Like the first crack in a wall that had seemed impenetrable. Over the following days, Sky began to emerge from its shell of grief and fear. It learned more English words, simple ones at first, then more complex phrases. Reeves learned some Corvin in return, enough to understand basic needs and emotions. Chin fabricated foods closer to Corvin dietary requirements, and Sky slowly regained some strength. But, at night, Reeves could hear Sky crying in the small cabin they'd converted for it. Quiet, muffled sobs that spoke of a pain no child should have to bear. On the 8th day, they received a transmission. Chin brought it to Reeves in the cockpit, her face pale. It's a Corvin military channel, she said. They're broadcasting a search for a missing royal and her child. They're calling it a kidnapping. A kidnapping. Reeves felt cold fury settle in his gut. They locked them in that chamber. Maybe not the same people searching now. Maybe. He thought about Sky, learning to smile again just yesterday when Reeves had shown it a hologram of Earth's oceans. Or maybe the people who want them dead are the ones broadcasting the search. So what do we do? Reeves pulled up the navigation charts. We find someone we can trust. Someone outside the military chain of command. And who would that be? He highlighted a location in the neutral zone, a space station run by an independent council, humans and Corvins working together. Meridian Station. If there's anyone who can help, it's them. The journey to Meridian took 4 days. Sky spent most of them in the cockpit with Reeves, watching the stars slide past through the viewport. It asked questions in its broken English, and Reeves answered as best he could. Why save? Sky asked on the 3rd day. Reeves looked at it. Why did I save you? Yes. Corvin and human not. Sky struggled for the word. Not friends. No, Reeves admitted. Our species fought a war. A lot of people died on both sides. Then why? Reeves thought about how to explain it. Because you needed help. And because your mother asked me to protect you. That's more important than old wars. Skye was quiet for a long time. Then softly, Mother gone. I know. I'm sorry. You try save her. I tried. It wasn't enough. Skye reached out and touched Reeves's hand, the same gesture he'd used to offer comfort. You try. Is enough. Something tight in Reeves's chest loosened slightly. He turned his hand over and let Skye's smaller hand rest in his palm. Thank you. They arrived at Meridian Station without incident. Reeves left Chen with the ship and took Skye with him into the station proper. The child stayed close to his side, overwhelmed by the crowds of humans, Corvins, and other species moving through the corridors. The council chamber was smaller than Reeves expected, a circular room with seats arranged in tiers. 3 humans and 3 Corvins sat in judgment, their expressions neutral as Reeves explained what they'd found. He showed them the recordings from the Corvin cruiser. The sealed chamber. The royal woman's wounds. The way someone had deliberately left them to die. When he finished, the silence was heavy. One of the Corvin counselors, an older male with silver-streaked scales, leaned forward. You understand what you are claiming? That someone within our military attempted to assassinate a member of the royal family? I'm telling you what I saw. This child. The counselor gestured toward Skye, who pressed closer to Reeves. Do you know who this is? A royal child. That's all I know. The counselor exchanged glances with the others. This is Prince Scaravith, 3rd in line to the imperial throne. And the woman you found was Queen Vareth, the emperor's sister. Reeves felt the weight of that information settle on him. 3rd in line. They'd been carrying the 3rd heir to an interstellar empire on their salvage runner for over a week. Who would want them dead? He asked. That, said one of the human counselors, is a complicated question. The Corvin counselor stood. Prince Scaravith must be returned to the Empire immediately. The proper authorities know. Reeves moved to put himself between Skye and the counselor. Someone in your proper authorities tried to kill them. I'm not handing Skye over until I know they'll be safe. Skye? That's what I call. He glanced at Skye. That's what the prince asked me to call him. Skye spoke up then, in clear Corvin. The counselor's eyes widened. What did he say? Reeves demanded. The Corvin counselor's expression shifted from bureaucratic neutrality to something approaching respect. He said, the human Reeves saved my mother and me when our own people left us to die. He tried to save my mother when she was beyond saving. He has shown more honor than those who wear the royal crest. He demands that you be recognized as his guardian until the truth is uncovered. I'm not. Reeves started, but Skye tugged on his sleeve. Please, Skye said in English. Stay. Reeves looked down at those 4 crystal blue eyes and saw fear and hope warring in them. This child had lost everything, its mother, its security, its world. And now it was asking him, a stranger from a species that had been at war with its own, to stay. He knelt down to Skye's level. I'll stay. I promise. Skye wrapped its arms around his neck in a Corvin gesture of trust, and Reeves held on carefully, feeling the small body tremble against him. The council deliberated for 3 days. During that time, Reeves and Skye stayed in quarters on the station. Chen joined them, bringing supplies and updates on the investigation the council had launched into the attack on Queen Vareth's ship. The truth, when it emerged, was uglier than Reeves had imagined. Political coup, Chen explained, pulling up the reports on her data pad. The Emperor has been pushing for stronger ties with humanity, trade agreements, cultural exchanges. A faction within the military sees it as weakness. They wanted Vareth and her son dead because she was the Emperor's strongest supporter for peace. And Scaravith? 3rd in line, like the counselor said. But with Vareth dead and Scaravith missing, the 2nd in line, General Crothes, moves up. Crothes is the head of the military faction. Reeves felt sick. They murdered her for politics. They tried to murder a child for politics. Chin corrected. And they would have succeeded if we hadn't picked up that beacon. Sky was listening from his seat by the window, understanding more English now. Crothy's bad? It asked. Yes, Reeves said simply. There was no point in lying. Crothy's is bad. Kill Mother? We think so. Sky's hands clenched into small fists. I tell Council. I tell everyone. You might have to, Reeves said gently. Are you ready for that? Sky looked at him with ancient eyes in a child's face. Mother, teach me. Royal must be brave. The council reconvened the next day. This time, the chamber was full, representatives from both the Corvan Empire and the Human Federation, along with media presence from a dozen worlds. The council had decided the truth needed to be public. Sky stood at the center of the chamber, small and alone. Reeves wanted to stand with him, but the protocol required the prince to testify independently. He watched from the gallery, his hands gripping the rail. Sky spoke in Corvan first, his voice clear and steady despite his age. The translation scrolled across Reeves's data pad. I am Prince Scaravith, son of Queen Varith. I testify that soldiers of our own fleet attacked our ship. I testify that my mother was wounded protecting me. I testify that we were sealed in a chamber and left to die. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The Corvan military representatives looked furious, but they couldn't contradict a royal prince's testimony. Sky continued. But a human found us. Captain Reeves found us. He did not leave us to die. He tried to save my mother's life. When she died, he protected me. He kept his promise to her. Sky turned and looked directly at Reeves. The human showed more honor than those who share my blood. I claim him as guardian under the right of preservation. The Corvan councillor shot to his feet. Your Highness, the right of preservation has not been invoked in centuries. I invoke it now. Sky's voice carried an authority that seemed impossible from someone so young. By ancient law, the one who saves a royal life may be claimed as guardian until the debt is repaid. Captain Reeves saved my life. I claim him. The chamber descended into chaos. Humans and Corvans alike argued, debated, shouted. But through it all, Sky stood firm, his eyes never leaving Reeves. The senior Corvan councillor finally called for order. The right of preservation is indeed ancient law, written before the Empire even formed. If Prince Scaravith invokes it, we cannot deny it. He looked at Reeves. Captain, do you accept this responsibility? Reeves climbed down from the gallery and crossed to where Sky stood. He knelt, bringing himself to eye level with the prince. Are you sure about this? This is your life, Sky. Your future. You promise, Sky said simply. You keep promise. I will, Reeves said. But this means your life changes. Mine changes. Everything changes. Already change, Sky replied. Mother gone. Can't go back. Only forward. Reeves smiled slightly. You're wise for your age. Mother teach me. She taught you well. Reeves stood and turned to face the council. I accept. The investigation into General Crothy's took 3 months. During that time, Reeves became Sky's official guardian under both human and Corvan law, an unprecedented arrangement that made headlines across both territories. They stayed on Meridian Station, in a suite provided by the council, while evidence was gathered and testimonies taken. Sky attended diplomatic lessons in the morning, taught by Corvan educators approved by the council. In the afternoons, Reeves taught him about human culture, history, and customs. In the evenings, they'd sit by the viewport and watch the stars, and Sky would tell Reeves stories his mother had told him. Mother say, Sky began one night, his English much improved, that humans and Corvans are like two hands. Different shape. Different purpose. But both can build something beautiful together. That's a good way to think about it, Reeves said. You think is possible? Humans and Corvans together? I think we're proof it's possible. Sky considered this. When Crothy's caught, what happened to me? You go back to the Empire. You're third in line to the throne, Sky. That's who you are. But you come? If you want me to. I want. Sky leaned against Reeves's side, a gesture that had become comfortable over the months. You are my guardian. Right of preservation says you stay until debt repaid. And when do you think that debt will be repaid? Sky looked up at him with those 4 crystal blue eyes. Never. You saved my life. Life is not something that can be repaid. Then I guess I'm stuck with you. Stuck? It's a human expression. It means bound together. In a good way. Sky smiled, a Corvin expression that showed small, sharp teeth. Stuck together. I like this. The trial of General Crothies was public and brutal. Evidence piled up, communications ordering the attack, payments to the soldiers involved, even a recorded conversation where Crothies discussed eliminating the problem of Varitha's influence. Sky had to testify again, and this time Reeves watched as the child recounted every detail of that day, his mother's fight, her wounds, the sound of the chamber door being sealed. Crothies was sentenced to life imprisonment. His co-conspirators were exiled. And the Emperor himself addressed the Empire in a broadcast that reached every Corvin world. My sister Varith died believing in a future where our species could live in peace with humanity, the Emperor said. She died because some of our own people feared that future. But her son lives, saved by a human who showed more honor and courage than those who plotted against her. Let this be a lesson, let this be a turning point. The old wars are over. A new era begins. Afterward, the Emperor requested a private meeting with Reeves and Sky. The imperial chambers were overwhelming, gold and silver everywhere, holographic displays showing the Empire's territories, guards standing at perfect attention. But the Emperor himself was smaller than Reeves expected, his scales dulled with age, his eyes sad. He knelt before Sky and spoke in Corvin. Sky responded, and they conversed for several minutes. Then, the Emperor turned to Reeves. You saved my nephew, he said in heavily accented but clear English. You tried to save my sister. You have done more for the Empire than you know. I did what anyone should have done, Reeves said. But many would not have. The Emperor placed a hand on Sky's shoulder. Scaravith has invoked the right of preservation. This is his choice, and I honor it. You will be his guardian, his teacher, his protector. Will you also be his bridge? His bridge? Between our peoples. You are human. He is Corvin. Together you represent what my sister died believing in, that we can be more than our wars. Reeves looked at Sky, who was watching him with hope and trust. I'll do my best. That is all any of us can do. They returned to human space 6 months after that first distress beacon. Reeves's salvage runner had been replaced with a diplomatic vessel, a gift from the Empire. Shin chose to stay on as crew, along with 3 Corvin guards assigned to protect Sky. But the ship felt less like a warship and more like a strange, blended family. Sky thrived. He grew taller, stronger, his scales taking on the deep blue color of maturity. He learned to speak English fluently, with only the slightest accent. He studied human and Corvin history, diplomacy, science, and art. And he never forgot his mother. On the anniversary of Queen Varitha's death, they traveled back to the Corvin Belt, to the wreckage of her ship. It had been left as a memorial, protected by both human and Corvin fleets. Sky stood at the viewport, looking at the broken vessel where his mother had died. You think she would be proud? He asked Reeves. I think she'd be amazed at who you've become. I still miss her. I know. That never goes away completely. But it gets easier to carry. Sky turned away from the viewport. Reeves? Yes? Thank you. For keeping your promise. For staying. Reeves put a hand on Sky's shoulder, a gesture they'd shared countless times now. Thank you for trusting me to stay. They stood there together, human and Corvin, guardian and ward, looking out at the stars that spread endlessly before them. The old wars were fading into history. New alliances were forming. And at the heart of it all was a promise kept, and a debt that would never truly be repaid, because some debts aren't meant to be repaid. They're meant to be honored, carried forward, and transformed into something greater. Skye would go on to become one of the Empire's greatest diplomats, working alongside humans to forge lasting peace. Reeves would remain his guardian until Skye came of age, then his advisor, then his friend. Their story would be told across both territories, a reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism aren't about conquest or victory, but about simple, stubborn compassion in the face of cruelty. And somewhere in the dark between stars, where a wounded queen had drawn her last breath, her sacrifice became something more than tragedy. It became a bridge. It became hope. It became proof that even in the darkest moments, even when abandoned and alone, one act of kindness could change the course of history. The human had found them. The human had tried. The human had kept his promise. And in doing so, had helped build the future Queen Vareth had died believing in.